Hey, Sub-Tours. My name is William Tingle of sub2deals.com. I'd like to welcome you to this episode of the Sub2 Deals Show, where we talk about all things subject to. Occasionally, we will cover other real estate investing topics, but it will always be something to help you with your real estate investing business. Today is another episode in our Real Investor series, where we feature real investors sharing real stories and actual deals. These guys are investors doing deals all across the country. There are no boot camps or courses to sell with these guys, just real tips and strategies and the things that are working today in their businesses and in their markets. They share them all, and these things can work for you too. So pay attention and take lots of notes. Our guest today is Glenn Willliams. Glenn is a real estate investor in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He's been investing for over 15 years and is currently a full-time investor. Now, Glenn specializes in buying and rehabbing, but he's recently started taking a look at subject to expand his rental portfolio. Glenn, welcome to the Sub2 Deals Show.
Thank you very much for having me here. Look forward to spending some time with you.
Yeah. Well, we're glad to have you. I tell you, I've been looking forward to talking with you. In the past, I did a few rehabs, and we don't do any of that stuff anymore. I know that can be a tough job until you really get that thing down to a real system. And it sounds like you've been doing it for a while, so I'm sure that you've really got things in a system and got things just running along. How many rehabs do you typically do at a time?
It varies from time to time. I mean, it seems to really go in bunches. I mean, we had 7 going over the winter, coming into the spring market. I mean, we were on pace to do 30 rehabs this year. Everything kind of slowed down with everything going on, but we usually have several going on at a time.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to doing rehabs and how tough that sort of thing was. You can make good money with them, that's for sure. Well, Glenn, tell us a little bit about yourself. Let's start out that way. Tell us about your background, what you did before real estate, and where you're from, and about your family.
Well, I'm born and raised in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Went to high school here. Went to college a few miles away from where I was born, and was an accounting and finance major there. Went off, got a computer programming job, did that for a while. Then started into real estate, and as I saw things start to go questionably with the real estate crash coming up, I went back into went back into computer programming and stuff to pay the bills and everything like that, and then went full time again in real estate investing in 2012 here. So my wife and I now live about 45 minutes outside of Minneapolis on a horse farm. We've got our dogs, our horse, our cat, some chickens. Very much more of a rural life now, which is really enjoyable.
Sounds like it. Tell me, how does a computer programmer decide one day that they want to be a real estate investor? What got you interested in real estate?
Um, well, I had actually met a real estate agent who was into investing, and his big philosophy was buying small multifamilies, specifically duplexes, uh, buy them, live in one side, rent out the other, move on to the next, move on to the next over a handful of years, and just build up a portfolio that way. I had met him before I got my programming job, but just the accounting and finance background and stuff, all the numbers for the rentals over time make sense to me. I mean, even in just a normal market, if you've got assets appreciating, rents going up, and mortgages paying down, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity over the long haul to do really well with that. I mean, what I thought was cash flow initially wasn't really cash flow. But you learn that over times too. But over the long haul, I mean, rental properties are a fantastic wealth creation vehicle. And I bought my first rental there a little over 25 years ago now. So that's kind of how I got into that aspect of the investing business.
Okay. Well, that would take me to my next question about how long you've been investing. When we got started, I guess I looked at some of the answers you'd sent me and thought you'd been investing since 1995. So, gosh, it is 25 years. That's not it.
It is
Holy
25
crap.
years. We're getting older. We lose decades like that. So
I'm like, oh, okay, 95, that was 15 years ago. Oh, no, that's 25. Oh, my gosh. Horrible. Dang, how old are we anyway? I don't know. So you've been in the game for 25 years. You actually started out just purchasing rentals.
Yep, that's correct. I started with rentals 25 years ago, and then I started getting into kind of more of the learning other different creative strategies uh, in the early 2000s, probably 2003, 2004 is when I started kind of diving into that, and I became a licensed agent at that time. Later, I became a broker and just kind of made my way with doing bits of wholesaling and my agent income up until the crash came along and sent me back to my day job.
So you're currently a licensed agent or licensed broker.
I am, yes.
We can get down 1,000 rabbit trails talking about real estate. I know I can. That brings me, that comes up in the forum a lot when people ask the question, do you need a license or should you have a license or is it advantageous to have a license if you're an investor? And listen, I had bad experiences in the very beginning with real estate agents. And when they hear investor or whatever, especially with some of the stuff I do, they'll tend to tell you things like, well, subject to is illegal and you can't do that. And they create a lot of problems. They won't present your offers to do that thing. So I really came into things with a negative view of agents in general that I still have a little bit of today, even though we work with a bunch of them. But so I tend to tell people, I think having a license, well, first of all, isn't necessary, but it can actually be a disadvantage. It's obviously somebody like you looks at it differently. So have you found at any time that it presented a disadvantage for you, or it's always been better?
Well, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, where I usually when people ask me about it, I say if you already have a license, fantastic. You don't have to give it up. And if you don't have a license, you don't have to go get one. I mean, there's so many avenues and so many ways to do various aspects of real estate that you don't need a license in order to go ahead and do those. For me, when I'm talking to sellers about buying their houses, I just use it as an asset. I mean, I tell them, hey, most of what I'm doing, we use the standard forms. We dot our I's, we cross our T's, we do all the city, state, federal required things for the seller to protect them as well as us. And just kind of having that level of professionalism helps me when I'm telling my story and trying to assist the sellers with their situation and come up with solutions for them. So it's how you approach it. If you're going to look at it as a negative, then you're going to have a problem if you're licensed talking to people. I view it as an asset, and I just spin it that way when I'm talking to people.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess, like you said, it just depends on how you look at it and how you use it.
Mm-hmm.
Or bad. Well, tell us about your business model. Now, I know primarily you buy, rehab, and resell, and you have a rental portfolio, but tell us a little bit more detail about that.
Sure. I mean, I've been doing kind of full-time real estate again for the past 8 years, and I had purchased a lot of my rental portfolio before that, but I started off just rehabbing a couple of houses a year, kind of playing around with it, and then about 3 to 4 years ago, I started to get significantly more serious about it and started to learn, get my processes down, Last year, finally got on my own way and hired an assistant, hired a project manager who's amazing, and all our projects are faster, faster, cheaper, um, fewer change orders. Just everything is so smooth having her on board running the projects for us that we do significantly better having that. But um, I finally got to a point in our business where we're doing a volume where it makes sense to bring folks on for that. Because before I was doing, I mean, even up to 6 to 8 a year, if I'm doing everything, you're kind of overloaded and you're not doing anything really, really well. You have to get certain things off of your plate. And once I got the project management off of my plate, we were able to do significantly better on that side. And I had more time to do things on the deal acquisition side and really do a better job talking to more folks and helping more people that way. But that was me mentally getting out of my own way and bringing folks on to help with the situation and really put us in a position to grow.
Yeah, I tell you this, I find that most investors that are full time, and I guess it's just part of our nature anyway, it's just the way we are. We think nobody can do the job better than we can, so we have to do everything, and it really limits your business.
It does. I mean, it depends. It depends on what your goal is. I mean, if you want a small conservative business where you're doing, I don't know, a few rehabs a year, making 100 grand a year or something like that, where you're doing a whole bunch of it. Well, one, if you're doing 3 or 4 a year, that's still not a full-time business. I mean, it's a good paid job, but you're really gonna put a ceiling on for yourself if you're not willing to kind of take that next step up to uh, start hiring people and grow that way. You're inhibiting the growth that way. But if you get above a couple projects between like 2 or 3 a year and 10, you start getting into that kind of adolescent business that Michael Gerber talks about in the E-Myth, where he says, when you're small, fantastic, everything's kind of easy, you're doing it all. When you're big, you're doing very little, and it's kind of more of a business and machine. That in between range is really, really hard on people. And that's where most of them fail, is that growth stage from doing a couple to that intermediate range. It's just you're too small to hire people because you don't necessarily have the revenue, and you're too big to really be able to handle everything yourself in a quality manner. So you gotta find a way to get through that stage and jump up if that's your goal. Spend too much time in the intermediate range and you're going to have a lot of problems.
Well, to do all those rehabs every year, how do you find them? What are your best sources for leads? One of the things I always like to ask investors is, if your life depended on generating quality leads within the next 24 hours, what would you do right this minute to go out there and
Okay. Well, I mean, uh, for me, the best source of leads for us is we do a lot of direct mail. And we do a lot of direct mail to a variety of niche lists that can be things like evictions, divorce, probate, tax delinquents, vacant properties, any of that type of stuff where there's a degree of motivation there for the sellers or the people that you're contacting. I mean, these are folks that have a situation that they're in where you can actually be of value and be a benefit to them and help them out of their situation. So, I mean, those are easier conversations to have. You're not just getting the folks calling you saying, well, yeah, if you pay me $1 million, I'll sell. It's these are legitimate people who may need to sell, and you can be of service to them. And even if they don't necessarily want to sell, you can get in conversation with them and benefit them one way or another. And like one of our company standards is, leave everyone better than we found them. It might just be information. We may do business with them. We may point them to a resource that they didn't have before. Find some way to help them out in some fashion. So that's the way I get most of my leads, is just mailing to the niches. Now the second part of your question, where you said if I had to get leads, if I had to get in conversation with folks in the next 24 hours, I would just open up the CRM that I have, that I've accumulated people contacting me over the last 5 years or so, and I'd reach out to all of them and see what their situation is. At one point, they reached out to me because they wanted to sell or needed to sell or something. I would reach out to all of them and talk to them, see what their situation is, see if there's something I can do to help them out, everything like that. Because I'm pretty sure there are still some folks in there who still want to sell if we could figure out a solution for them. So if I needed to get in conversation with folks in the next 24 hours, that's what I would dig into personally in our situation.
Now, you say direct mail is your major source of generating leads, and I know from experience, because I've done a lot of direct mail in the past. Well, I say a lot for me. Mine has always been highly targeted. But direct mail is pretty expensive now. In your opinion, if somebody relies on direct mail, what is a good budget if you want, to buy a significant number of houses? What kind? If somebody's getting started and they're saying, okay, I think direct mail is the way that I want to go, what would you recommend as far as a starting budget? And what kind of mailings do you do? Do you do letters, postcards? Do you do them yourself in-house? Do you have a company that does it for you? How do you handle that?
I predominantly do postcards, and we're switching over now with some of our mailers. We're going to start doing letters instead. But with most of it, I think with a lot of what we do, it's not so important what we send, it's when we send it. So, for example, someone just filed for an eviction. Let's say they filed for an eviction last week and the court date is this week. Well, if I see that they're filing for eviction and I get the mail piece to them last Friday when they're between the eviction filing date and actually having the court date, they're motivated. If they're not a professional landlord. If they're a professional landlord, they know it's the deal. But if it's someone who has a property or two properties or may have some issues or some stress surrounding it, just connecting with them at that time, I think, is more important than necessarily the piece. Again, all you want to do is you're trying to get them to call you or go to your website, submit some information. You're trying to get in conversation with them. That's all the marketing is supposed to do. You can do some degree of pre-selling with it, but for the most part, you just want to engage in conversation with them, whatever form that winds up taking. So I think it's most important how timely a lot of this stuff is, at least the way we do it, is if you can get there when the pain points are kind of the highest, we're able to help them out at a point when they need it. So that's what we do there. With our weekly mailers, we're doing a smaller volume of stuff on court cases and stuff that we pull on a weekly basis. So usually we're just uploading those lists and sending mail out via click to mail, because you can send out small mailers with them and get them sent out easily that way. For larger mailers, there are a ton of mail houses out there that can handle it for you. We've got a couple big campaigns going out with Yellow Letters HQ coming up here. Again, hitting some of the targeted lists and just switching up the way we're reaching out to them to try to connect with them a little bit better. So that's how we do that. As far as budgets go, the more targeted you can be, the less budget you need. That's my viewpoint, is if you can go off and you can get down to the courthouse and spend the time and energy getting lists that are the freshest and reach out to those people right away, you don't need big budgets in order to do that. I mean, if you're doing small volumes, you may be talking 50 cents for a postcard. Well, our weekly mailers among a few of our lists wind up being maybe like 100 pieces a week. So I mean, on our small niches, I mean, we're spending a few $100s a month. Now, on our big lists, we're sending out thousands of pieces on our big niches, but our timely lists are just smaller. So, I mean, you can get started, and you can probably get in conversation with folks spending $500 to $1,000 a month on pieces as long as you're super targeted. Not saying you're getting deals or a deal or anything like that. I mean, there's no promise of results that way. But if you're hitting the right types of lists at that time, you should get engagement if you're hitting them at a point when they're looking for assistance some way.
And I totally agree. What you're describing earlier, I used to call them accidental landlords. A lot of times they're people that inherited a house, or they bought another house with the intent of selling theirs and they couldn't get it sold, so they just said, heck, we'll rent it. And then they had a bad tenant experience or two bad tenant experiences or whatever, and they're just ready to unload that. And I had a guy that would go down to the courthouse for me, and we were looking for specific things. Because you can go through the actual eviction filing folders at the courthouse. A lot of people don't know that, but you can see all the information, how much the rent is, how far behind they are. And the accidental landlords, they may not have been paid in 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Now, the professionals, they're only missing 1 month's rent, because when they don't pay, they get down there and file it. But when you find somebody, the rent's $500 a month and they're owed $3,000, yeah, that's not a professional. Right there. That's somebody that can use your services.
That's exactly it. Yeah, and those are the folks you can be the biggest benefit to, just because they've gotten in over their head for some reason, and if you know what you're doing, you can help them out there.
I'll tell you another thing that used to be a lot of fun for me when I was local in the Macon, Georgia market, which is where I got started, is to go to eviction court Tuesday mornings and sit there and watch them just get tore up. And I mean, when you can hit them up out in the hall with a card and say, hey, I can buy that house, and I can get that tenant out of there, you won't even have to deal with it. And they're open to conversation.
Absolutely. It's the pain points. I mean, that's where, I mean, we talk about it all the time. Most of the time, we're not buying a house, we're buying a problem that we're helping them to solve. And as long as you can help them out of that, I mean, sometimes you're just helping them out, sometimes you're buying the house.
Okay. So do you have any favorite tools? I mean, you do mailers and that sort of thing, but do you have any tools that you use in your business that you can share with us, things that help make your job easier?
Well, since we market to a bunch of different lists and a bunch of different channels, we have a pile of numbers on CallRail. So CallRail will you can get a bunch of numbers there, and you can route them different ways and answer them different ways and this and that depending on the situation. So for my hot lists, I actually have it roll straight to my cell phone. Just because I know if a call comes in with the distinctive ringer on my phone, I know I really want to talk to them immediately. I don't want to play phone tag at all. So that's a great tool for us. Asana is good for project and task management. The big one for us in our rehabs is utilizing Slack with our team, and just able to keep all of our messaging per project in one spot, rather than trying to figure out, wait, where did we talk about that? Was that on a phone call, or did someone text me, or is that an email, or where did we have that conversation? all of our conversations about each of the projects is in the specific property Slack channel or our full company channel, depending on what the topic is. And that has helped us keep everything straight as far as that goes. That's been a big asset for me, kind of moving from doing small to doing larger quantities. Now we are starting to utilize a new rehab project management software that has a whole bunch of stuff built in. Honestly, when push comes to shove, I don't do a lot with it. My project manager does a lot with it because that's kind of her responsibility and handling that part of the business. So I don't see a ton in there, but she utilizes that a lot and handles the materials there, handles the Gantt charts, handles the scope of work, the vendors, all the contractors, everything like that. So I mean, she's making really good use of that tool, and we're still getting that built out kind of the way that we want it to be. But she really likes that one. But I try not to get in there just because thankfully I can kind of pass stuff off to her, and once I pass it to her, honestly, I don't even see the property until it's done typically, because she does an amazing job.
That's the way to do it. That's right. Hey guys, Glenn and I are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Glenn's going to talk to us about his criteria when evaluating a deal, and what makes the decision for him on whether he wants to take on the deal or not. So you guys hang out with us, and we'll be back in just a minute.
The Sub2 Deals Show with your host, Sub2 expert William Tingle. We'll be right back. Hey Sub2ers, have you been trying to learn how to invest in real estate? It can take you years to learn the ropes on your own. How many people do you know who have been looking into real estate investing for years, but have never bought a single house? Do you have shelves full of courses but lack the courage to get out there and close on that first deal? Are you tired of so-called coaches who always seem to have just one more thing to sell you that you absolutely must have to be successful? Are you tired of trying to piece it all together with YouTube videos and free forms found on the internet? Is that really any way to build a business? William Tingle has been coaching real estate investors all over the country for over 16 years. And if you are ready, he can show you how to buy all the houses you want, anywhere you want, without ever having to ask a banker for one thin dime. Contact William today at sub2deals.com and schedule your free 30-minute strategy session. Talk it over, and if you think you're finally ready for success, he'll get you going. Back to the show, the Sub2 Deals Show, with your host, Sub2 expert William Tingle.
Hey, Sub2ers, we're back here with Glenn Williams. Glenn is primarily a buy, rehab, and retail guy. He does have a rental portfolio that he's building. Just started taking a look at Sub2 stuff, and so I asked him to come on here and talk to us a little bit about his business and what he does. When we left off, Glenn was sharing a bunch of information with us on the tools that he uses, how he finds his deals, and now he's going to talk to us a little bit about, he sent out his marketing, he's talked to people, he's got a few deals on the line, and now he's evaluating. He's trying to decide how he decides if it's a good deal, if it's something that he wants to do, so he's going to share some of those tips. So Glenn, when you get some sellers that are open to selling to you, to talking with you about things, how do you decide if it's something that makes sense?
Well, I mean, on the rehab side of things, I mean, if I'm looking to just buy, rehab, and resell, it's very much a numbers thing. I mean, I'm usually spending a lot of time with them on the phone, discussing the situation. I meet them in the property, walking through the property with them, talking to them some more, spending a lot of time there. I take a lot of pictures of the properties when I go through there. And usually what winds up happening is, from the pictures and from the notes that I'll jot down when I get back in my car after I meet with them, then I wind up getting home, running everything through a spreadsheet that I've got, and figuring out, okay, where are we at with things? Are we where does my offer need to be in order to make sense for what we're trying to do in the time frames that we're looking to go. Recently, because we've gotten much better with the project management, our timelines have shrunk. So we're able to get stuff done faster, so that helps us be able to offer them more. But then, I mean, on a typical rehab for us, I mean, we're shooting to make anywhere between 30 and 40 typically per property. It varies. If it's something quick and easy, we're okay with less than that. If there's uncertainty of a situation, or we're dealing with a little higher dollar amount, we might want to make more. But in general, that's what we're shooting to do. But I just drop everything into my spreadsheet and then get back to the sellers a day or two after I talk to them. I know most people in a lot of markets are saying, "Whoa, you leave the house without getting a contract," and I'm like, well, it's Minnesota. We're a little bit different. I mean, it's kind of the Midwest feel, and people don't like to be pressured into signing something on the spot. Are there deals I'm sure I probably lose by taking a more relaxed approach? Sure. Are there others that I get because I do it that way? Yes. So as far as that criterion goes for fix and flip, that's kind of what we look to do. I mean, if I'm looking to do something with seller financing, or if I were looking at a sub-2 deal or something like that, I'd definitely be, there's so many moving parts to that, and that's one of the nice things about it is so many moving parts to analyze with that you can do a lot of different things depending on the opportunity in front of you. I mean, if you have to put more money up front, I want to get a better price. If it's going to be a shorter deal I'm going to have to get it refinanced or out or sold, I'm going to want a better price because you're not making your profit over time like you could if it were a long-term deal. I know I mentioned to you previously, I mean, I'll take properties that I know are negative cash flow if there are other circumstances that make sense for it. Like I've got a rental portfolio. If I've got positive cash flow elsewhere that I can offset the negative of this with, and I've got a mortgage that I'm taking over that may only have like 13 years left, and I know that's going to pay off really fast and gain equity really, really fast in it, plus I'm getting equity up front, sure, I'll take some negative cash flow that way because I'm not going to have the cash flow hit because I've got the offsetting cash flow elsewhere. So I'm not really taking money out of my pocket that way. I'm just balancing cash flows. So, I mean, in the creative arena, there are so many different moving parts to it. But you just want to make sure you're not putting out a ton of cash in a situation where you don't see a way that you're really going to benefit extra by doing it.
Yeah, I agree. As far as evaluating a rehab, I guess my question on that, if I were just looking at this sort of thing that I wanted to do, is pretty much the numbers that I've heard since the very beginning. And I mean, I think the first time I heard it was Ron LeGrand and Robin Thompson and whoever else. And the thing they always throw out is 70% of market value minus repairs, minus this, minus that. I mean, are those like the tried and true numbers that you basically use evaluating something to buy and rehab and stuff?
I mean, you're in the ballpark as long as you're in typically somewhere in, for us, our median house price is right around $300,000 now. So I mean, we're typically buying stuff that we'll sell anywhere between say $250,000 and $350,000. So in those situations, you're right in the ballpark there if you wind up going about it that way. Thinking about the one that it looks like I'm signing up here actually later today, using those figures, we're a little bit higher than that, but the ARV could be higher than we're talking about too, or than my conservative ARV. It could be higher than that. But I mean, you're somewhere in the ballpark. I usually tell people if you're buying a house, and if you're buying a house, you need to buy it quick and dirty rule somewhere in the 50 to 60% of what the ARV is if you're going to rehab it, or if you're going to buy it and wholesale it. I get a lot of people who try to send me wholesale deals that the numbers are really way far off. But I usually wholesalers starting out, I tell them, if you know what the ARV is and you're buying somewhere in that 50 to 60% on a normal rehab, you're in the ballpark. I mean, each one's a little bit different, but you're at least in the ballpark so that there's a conversation that can be had.
Okay, can you give us an example of a deal that you're working on right now?
Sure. I mean, I've got one right now that like I said, I'm signing up later today. He called me this morning saying, "Yep, we're officially going to be doing it." I've been talking to him for about a week and a half, and it's an estate situation, and he's a personal representative, and I do a fair amount with the states. Something about the way I do business and talk to folks. I mean, I'm able to build good rapport with them and build a relationship. So people like me and trust me and believe I'll do what I say I'm going to do. So he called in an estate. We talked on the phone initially, probably 30 to 45 minutes, discussing everything. Went out to the house, spent an hour 15, hour and a half walking through the house, talking to him, explaining the process, just answering any questions, kind of imparting knowledge, explaining how we make sure the whole process is done right and everything's taken care of the way it needs to be taken care of. And then since then, we've talked a couple times on the phone because he had other people coming out too. So just every time I talk to him, spend some time building relationship, building rapport, everything like that. So I know full well on this one, and it's not unusual that he had offers higher than mine. And he's taking my offer instead just because he said he wants to work with me instead of someone else. And I mean, and that's so important for people to understand that people want to do business with people who are like them and that they like and they trust. Even if you have a high number, you can't just be a number on a sheet of paper. You need to be more than that. And that's one thing I've learned over decades of doing this and talking to folks is just you go in and have a conversation and you try to help them out. And the more you're doing that and earnestly doing that and not just trying to get like a screaming deal or something like that, I mean, people can tell.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I agree. You know, we just had a conversation on the forum this morning. We were talking about pre-foreclosures, and I was sharing my experiences in the past, working in a local market, knocking on doors, talking to people, and I was able to buy foreclosure properties every single month. And you know, somebody had made the comment that they worked foreclosure, the door knocking for a year before they ever got a deal, and were asking for tips. I said, well, you know, the main thing is that the first thing we do is approach people with a heart to help. You know, we're going to explore every avenue of helping them keep their house, keep their home. If there's something we can, you know, most people in foreclosure never even think about having an honest conversation with the bank because they think, well, the bank's not going to listen. They just want their money. But there's a lot of options for people. We've helped people, you know, get forbearances and have, you know, loan modifications at absolutely no cost. And if we can help them do that and stay in their house, I mean, that goes a long way with your reputation and just feeling good about what you do. Then if it's obvious that that's not going to be an option, either they've lost their job, they don't have the money, they can't work with the bank, then we'll go into how we can purchase the home and stop the foreclosure and help their credit and do something. We first try to help. It makes a big difference.
It does. I mean, we know so much having been in and kind of doing this full time, that, I mean, most people out there don't know, I mean, don't know any of what we know. So, I mean, sometimes they just want someone or need someone to help guide them and give them options and have that honest conversation. And as long as you lead with the giving hand and are legitimately trying to help folks, I mean, sometimes you buy the house, sometimes you help them with the process, sometimes you give them information. I mean, we're out to help people, period. That's what we do.
I mean, literally, that's what I mean, I've said many times, listen, I may not be able to buy your house, but I can at least be a resource for you for some ways that may be able to help.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way it just goes back to what we were talking about earlier with buying houses. I think we were talking about accidental landlords. It's, 90% of the time, it's not about the house. It's about the person in the house. You can develop relationships with those people and communicate with them, and we're good to. This is one of my favorite questions about tell us about your most unusual deal. I've had guys on here tell me about divorce situations, about murder for hire plots. I mean, just all kinds of stuff. But think about all the deals you've done, your most unusual one, the one with the most moving parts, difficult people to deal with, that sort of thing. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, thankfully I haven't had those kinds of stories yet. I mean, knock on wood here, but honestly, probably the one with the most challenges or the most moving parts for me wound up being, honestly, my first rehab that I ever did. I mean, first off, I bought the house. I offered on a HUD auction on Thanksgiving morning. A house had just popped on the market, and I put an offer in sight unseen, and I got it. And I was like, oh, I wonder what I just offered on. So I actually went out, took a look at the property, and I mean, it made sense. So I mean, I'm glad I offered on it that day. But then buy it, getting ready to actually do the rehab, and then contract I was going to have do the work, who had worked on rentals for me for many years for me, wound up going to jail. I'm like, all right, now I guess I have to find someone else to do the work. I thought I had this all planned and organized out, and obviously that didn't quite work out that way. So, I mean, found another individual who had done some work on some of my rentals previously, and he came in and he was able to finish it out, and I mean, it turned out fantastic. I mean, this was 8 years ago, so I mean, in a lower end neighborhood, I mean, I had it listed for 90 and we sold it really quickly. Appraisal came back and the appraisal said only 70. So all of a sudden I wind up taking a big cut there, and there was a lot of FHA activity that time, and this was an FHA appraisal. So you're not getting out of that appraisal valuation. So we talked to the seller, we negotiated a few other things, but wound up selling at the lower price, and still made, give or take, $13,000. Would have been nice to make in the ballpark of 30 instead, but I learned some lessons on below square footage with FHA that they don't count it. So even though it's a value to a buyer, if you're going FHA, they don't care. So that's a good thing to learn. So I mean, it was a good one to learn from doing my first rehab. Thankfully not horrible, but there were a few oddities there.
Well, the great thing is, I mean, you had some things happen, made some mistakes, and still made money. So I mean, it's like going to a seminar and getting a check for doing so. That's the way I look at it.
Yep, agreed.
So tell me, Glenn, how did you learn how to do what you do? go into real estate. And of course, all of us have shelves and shelves of courses. We've all been to these boot camps and seminars. But what did you do that really helped you learn to do what you do?
I did all that stuff. I bought a lot of courses, went to boot camps, went to a lot of REIA meetings, everything like that. And the bulk of that's just seems like mostly surface level stuff, not necessarily the best to actually get you really rolling. I started to take the business significantly more seriously 3 to 4 years ago. And that's why I joined the 7-figure flipping mastermind with Bill Allen is the one who runs that now. They've got a couple different programs, 7-figure altitude and 7-figure runway. The altitude one is the one for people who are doing more really building a business and stuff. And the runway program is the one for folks kind of getting started, kind of learning the business and connecting with folks. A lot of the altitude folks and a lot of the other people are really there to help out using their actual experience doing the businesses to help folks along. That's kind of a treasure trove to be able to plug into and ask questions and realize that, there are 20 of us in the altitude group who have dealt with that, and we can all give feedback and guidance and everything like that, and just really having a good program to help people get into action and taking the right actions and not getting stuck in the minutia of the day-to-day and actually doing what you need to do in order to move your business forward. But when I initially joined the group, it was really about, okay, what do I need to do to start building a business out of this? What do I need to do so that I can actually do more and grow and put myself in a position where I'm not doing everything and we can build up and do more. I'm not enamored by these huge gross figures that people toss out there. I'm more into how do we build this to a point where I can gain more time freedom for myself. And being a part of that organization has really helped me take the steps and move forward. I wouldn't have hired anyone if I were not in that group. So thankfully, seeing what they do and how they do it has really pushed me and enabled me to do more and grow and put myself in a position to help more people and provide more for more people, whether it's my employees or contractors or help out homeowners out of their situation. Because we're in a better position, we can help more of those folks.
I agree. So, Glenn, you shared a lot of information with us. Tell us all about your business, how you learn to do what you do. But let's just take this down to one question here. If you could give new investors just starting out or anybody that watches this or listens to this, hey, I want to do what this guy does. If you could give them advice, one piece of advice, what would it be?
The biggest thing is, the biggest challenge I see most people get is they start going to meetings. They go to the local REIA meetings, which can be a very valuable resource for them. But then you've got 4, 5, 6 speakers a year come talking to them about different strategies and everything like that. And everyone's got a course, everyone's got a boot camp, everyone's got this, that, and the other thing. And it all sounds fantastic because, all these folks are fantastic salespeople. That's what it is. The big thing is kind of to figure out, what do you want to do? What kind of business do you want to run? Pick one and really focus and do that one. It's far too easy to dabble in a bunch of them or kind of play around in a bunch of things. I'm not saying to never do any other strategies, but when you're starting out, you just can't. If you're going to grow and learn and become exceptional at doing the real estate investing business, you need to focus. You need to do one, pick it. I don't care which one it is. For me, it's rehabbing. I'm starting to do more in the creative finance and adding properties to my rental portfolio with seller financing or sub two and things like that. I'm starting to do more of that, but my core is rehabbing. So that's why I do if a lead comes in that doesn't necessarily fit that, maybe I pass it on to someone who does that strategy, or I find some other way to help them. But I don't get bogged down trying to say, ooh, this might be a lease option. Now I'm going to figure out how to do a lease option and how to market for lease option tenant buyers and this, that, and the other thing. It distracts you, especially when you're starting out. You need to pick one and really do that and focus on the activities that are going to move the needle for you. I mean, focus on the activities that are going to put you in front of people who need your help, not get stuck too much in analysis paralysis, too much information. I mean, networking is great, but don't only network. You need to actually talk to sellers if you're going to do the business. So that's the thing. Focus, build up your one business as a silo. When it's running well, you can move and start building another silo. Up until then, don't do it. Just focus on one thing.
That is excellent advice. I tell people that all the time. It's great to be a transaction engineer, but man, it's a lot of work. Pick a horse and ride it. Stick with it. I see so many investors that'll get started in something, and just when they're starting to get some traction, oops, there's something else. Let's go look at this one for a while. You've got to, for me, it's a matter of, what kind of lifestyle do you want to have, and what will get you there with something that you enjoy doing. If you don't enjoy talking to people so much or whatever, you may want to just use a certain type of marketing and just rehab and retail houses. Or if you enjoy meeting with people and talking with people, you may want to be knocking on doors and doing this and doing that. You just have to pick something that works for your personality. Do you agree?
Absolutely. And the interesting part is too, I mean, there are people in mastermind groups with me too who have the same situation. I mean, this is not just for someone who's brand new. It's almost like they start to build a business, they're gaining traction, and the way they're wired, they almost get bored with it. And they want to start up or do something else for some reason where, okay, if they just focused on what they're doing for a year or two, I mean, they could build an amazing business out of it, but it's almost like they get bored and want to find the next shiny object or something like that to chase, when, like you said, they're so close, they're really gaining traction, they're having success. It's almost like, to some degree, at points it becomes a little too easy for them, and they want to look for another challenge as opposed to optimizing and really becoming exceptional at their one thing.
Get great at what you're doing now, and then replace yourself with other people who are competent, can do a good job, and then move on to the next thing. And then do that over and over and over. You can have a rehabbing business if you want to. You can acquire properties to keep for rentals or sell with owner financing, which I like. And then just whatever. I mean, God, there's so many possibilities in what we do.
Absolutely. I agree completely.
Well, Glenn, thanks so much for being on here today. It was great listening to you talk about your business. I know, having done a few rehabs, I know it's a lot of work, but it sounds like you've got that thing dialed in. So, you're making it sound kind of easy. I was tempted to do one, almost.
Well, I mean, thankfully, I mean, for me, the biggest thing that's really moved the needle for us recently is bringing in my project manager, and then being exceptional on the upfront planning and coordination of the projects. I mean, that's the part that I look back on my early rehabs and saying, well, all right, a rehab that probably should have taken 2 months took 6, and I had a bunch of change orders, and at the end of the project, I've got like 70 receipts to Home Depot and Menards and Lowe's in my pocket, and it's like, that's not the optimal way to do this. I mean, you can get it done much faster and easier if you get your upfront planning correct. So once we got that in place and really started to hone in and create an exceptional process for that, made a huge difference for us on how fast we get stuff done, how predictably we make more money on every project. I mean, there's less stress. Just, the whole concept of cutting down the tree. Well, you're going to spend a lot of time sharpening that axe. Well, the planning process for a rehab is the sharpening of the axe.
Okay. Well, listen, tell me, Glenn, I understand that. I mean, I know you've been working on this process for years, and you hired an acquisitions manager. I think did you say you had an acquisitions manager? Or
I
you're still
don't.
taking that? I'm
doing the acquisitions, but I've got an assistant. I've got an amazing project manager who runs all of that.
Nice. So I know you had mentioned to me that you got this thing running like a pretty good machine now. You're actually starting to help other people get their businesses set up in a similar way. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct. I mean, when I really analyzed and saw how much of a mess all of my rehabs were before I brought my project manager on, and really looking back and seeing how much of a difference it's made having our processes down on the front end, I really realized that, okay, for folks who are starting out or doing a handful of projects a year, we could really help them out getting their projects planned out, get their scopes of works, material lists, timelines, everything like that. All the stuff that you should do if you're going to be doing this kind of professionally. I mean, we can help all of them to get that all put out into a nice document that you can bring to your contractor and say, here it is. This is exactly what we're doing. This is exactly our scope. We know our materials list, so when we can go off and order that, we've got that in place. We know how much of everything we need based off of the house measurements, what we're going to do, everything like that. So I just realized that what we're doing can really benefit folks that way. And we can absolutely spend or save time, money, and stress on them and help them to do the whole business better. If they're just starting out or doing smaller volume, we can really be a big value to them. They can't afford to hire a project manager at that point. It's just, you're not doing a big enough volume. If you're doing 10 plus deals a year, you should probably do it all in-house. But if you're less than 10, we can really add value to what they're trying to do and help folks out. And just like working with sellers, we're out to help folks and provide value for them.
So if someone listening or watching wanted to get in contact with you to find out about how you can help them out, how would they reach you?
The best way to reach out to me is probably going to be my email address. Email is Glenn, Glenn, at fairpricehousesale.com. That's my investing business. If you have questions about any of our business there or anything, they can reach out to me there. If they've got questions about what we're doing with the project management, we've got the domain. We don't have the website set up yet, but the domain's going to be REI Project Management.com. And like I said, we don't have it built out yet. That's why I'm saying best way to reach me is straight through my direct email to me. And we can have a conversation, just like we have conversations with the sellers. If they have questions or want some guidance or anything like that, we can talk and see what I can do to help folks out.
Okay. Guys, you hear that? If you're interested in rehabbing, how to manage your projects, just get in touch with Glenn, and he can tell you what he can do to help you out with that. So great. I didn't have anybody to do that. I just had a couple of courses and maybe a couple of Ron LeGrand tapes, something like that, where he said go buy the cheapest vanity you can find. That sort of thing. So I'm sure you would be a true. tremendous help. Glenn, thanks so much for being with us today and sharing your business. We appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, so thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate having the time here, and hopefully some folks can get a little bit of knowledge from my decades of learning and growing and making mistakes and doing some stuff right. But hopefully they can take some stuff away, and it helps them go in the right direction.
I'm sure. Okay, guys, that's it for this episode of the Sub 2 Deal Show podcast. You can find the show notes for this episode along with a complete transcript at sub2podcast.com. If you enjoyed this episode, we would love it if you would subscribe and give us a 5-star rating and review at Apple Podcast. It only takes a minute, and it helps others discover the show. You can subscribe as well as leave a rating and review by visiting Apple Podcasts. Just do a quick search for the Sub 2 Deal Show. If you haven't yet, you can join our free Facebook group at sub2forum.com. Very active forum with a lot of experienced investors. Love to have you there. And you can also find lots of resources to help you grow your real estate investing business at sub2deals.com. So until next time, keep learning, keep talking to sellers, and you will buy some houses.